Eka took the items Ini gave to her and kept it under the tree and began to make some incantation.
Ekaba imobo elebenia. Ajanaka ikabrenda. Eko anana eshene. I plead for you to make Ini and her husband poor. Make her poor to the extent that she won't see any food.
Once upon a time, in a small village called Idemili, there lived two women named Ini and Eka. Ini and Eka were very good neighbors who lived close to each other. They were more than neighbors. In fact, they were very close friends. Ini was a kind and generous woman who loved and trusted everyone. She thought everyone was just like her, generous and kind, and so she treated people with so much love, trust, and respect. Eka, on the other hand, was a very cunning, wicked, and greedy woman. She never loved to see anything good happen to other people. In fact, she was selfish and way too greedy than anyone could imagine. Ini was married to a wealthy man named Obike, who was a farmer. Obike had acres of farmland where he planted yams, cassavas, corns, and different kinds of crops. He had a very large barn of yam where he stored yams in thousands. He also had many workers. He was indeed rich. Eka's husband, called Agu, was not as well off. He was just a poor hunter who fed his family from the meat he caught from the bush and sold at the market. He was poor. Eka was always jealous of Ini's wealth and happiness, although she always pretends to be happy. Ini never knew Eka was a green snake under the green grass. She saw Eka as her own sister, but little did she know that she was a mini devil. Ini's husband, Obike, loved his wife so much and spoils her and her children with so many gifts. Each time Ini's husband buys her a new jewelry or wrapper, Ini would rush down to her neighbor's hut and begin to show her what her husband got for her. Ini would say to her friend, "Eka wanyoma, my husband just bought me a beautiful set of jewelry, nice wrappers and dresses. My husband has been so kind towards me. I don't know what I can use to thank him. Just look at them now." Eka, out of jealousy, would reply,
They are fine. They are so beautiful. I love them. And I'm sure it will look nice on you. I'm happy on your behalf.
She would say in a very jealous tone. Ini, out of her generosity, would give her some of the wrapper, dresses, and jewelries. Eka would accept the items, pretending to be happy. But then, when she goes back to her hut, she would start saying bad things against her friend.
Did I even ask her to give me any of these items? Ini is always showing off and telling everyone that her husband is rich. I don't blame her. Don't blame her.
While Ini, on the other hand, would be happy that she gifted her friend some of the items her husband bought for her. Ini trusted Eka to the extent that each time her husband tells her how much he made from his farm business, Ini would immediately tell Eka about it and even how much her husband made. Ini never kept any secret regarding her family away from Eka. She would tell her the whole story or event happening in her family. This made Eka hate her even more and deeply. Behind Eka's fake smile lay a big hatred for Ini. One day, Ini's husband Obike bought his wife and children different beautiful items. Ini, as usual, took some of the items and gifted them to Eka and her children. Eka was filled with jealousy and saw nothing good in what Ini did for her, and she swore to deal with her. On a very cold Friday morning, Eka took most of the items she has received from her friend and embarked on a journey deep into the forest to a shrine called Owaki Shrine. This shrine was a shrine located under a 200-year-old mighty big tree. Eka took the items Ini gave to her and kept it under the tree and began to make some incantation.
Ekaba imobo elebenia. Ajanaka ikabrenda. Eko anana eshene. I plead for you to make Ini and her husband poor. Make her poor to the extent that she won't see any food to eat. I want to be the one giving her. Grant me this request, Owaki, and I will come back with a bigger token to thank you.
After Eka finished her incantations and declarations, she started going back home. She was very happy that finally she had fulfilled her long-time wish. After a few weeks, Eka kept waiting to hear a sad story from Ini regarding her husband's wealth. But rather, Ini kept telling her more and more beautiful and surprising stories regarding her husband's business. They kept making more and more and more money, and it became twice as rich. Eka was so disappointed. She said,
"How can this not work on her? How is it even possible?"
She went back to the Owaki shrine to meet the chief priest who was representing the old tree. The chief priest told her that Ini's heart was very pure and that as such, there was no spell she could cast on her that could work because she is innocent and has a pure heart. That the only way the spell would work on her was to make her hate her or dislike her or even quarrel and fight with her. Eka went home disappointed. She tried to find ways to upset Ini. She tried to make Ini quarrel with her or call her names, but Ini never fell into her evil trap. She was too peaceful and never saw Eka as an enemy. Rather, she apologized first at any misunderstanding Eka tried to make. Eka began to spread lies about Ini and her family all over the village, calling them names. But Ini could hear all these rumors and pretended like she didn't. She refused to stoop to Eka's level. She remained kind and compassionate towards everyone, even Eka. Eka, on seeing that none of her plans had worked, went back to Ini, knelt before her and pleaded her forgiveness. Ini forgave her and they became friends again. But after a few weeks, Ini's husband, Obike, got a very big contract from the king of Idemili town. He was going to supply 7,000 tubers of yam to the king for the upcoming New Yam festival. The king offered to pay him a huge amount of money, and also some acres of land was allocated to Ini's husband. Her husband was overjoyed and told his wife about the great news. Ini was so excited that she couldn't hold back her joy because they were going to be twice as rich than they were before. Ini, being so ignorant, rushed immediately to Eka's hut and told her about the whole news. She told her everything without reserving any information. Eka was pretending to be happy, but after Ini left, she was so angry and jealous. She was so bitter, and she began to plot how she would take the money the king had gifted them. Since going spiritually did not work, she decided to do a physical attack. She came up with a very sinister idea, and she was very excited. She said to herself,
"By the time I am done with Ini, she will regret ever coming across me."
One day, Eka decided to take her jealousy to a new level. It was time to carry out her dangerous plan. In order to carry out this plan, she needed some able men who could assist her carry out her dirty plan. So she embarked on a journey to the neighboring village. When she got to the village, she saw some group of young men. She negotiated the amount she would pay them, and she instructed them on how and when they would do the job for her. And she promised to pay them a heavy sum of money, and they agreed to carry out the plan at night. But it was going to be on the day Ini's husband would be away from home. After 2 weeks, Ini came to Eka's hut and told her that her husband had left for the neighboring village for a business and that he would be staying away for 2 weeks before coming back home. Eka was very excited as her long-awaited moment had arrived. That afternoon, she hurriedly left and went to inform the men to launch their attack that night. She came back and pretended like everything was okay. That fateful night, Ini and her son, Ose, had retired to their various beds. As they were sleeping, all of a sudden, the group of men broke into Ini's hut, shut her up, and took her son away. Eka and the men's plans went very successful without no trace. After they had left, Ini came out that night screaming for help. But no one could come out of their hut to help her because everyone was scared. They took the boy to a remote location where no one would see or find him. They kept him hidden. The next morning, Ini continued searching for her missing son, but all her search proved abortive. She was distraught. The villagers also joined in the search, but they were unable to find Ose. The next day, when Ini's husband Obike came back, he heard that his son has been kidnapped. He was very devastated. After a few days, Ini received a letter from the men who took her son. In the letter, they demanded a large sum of money in exchange for Ose. Ini was heartbroken because the money they requested was way too much. It was 3 times what the king had promised to pay her husband. But she and her husband knew that they had to pay the ransom in order to save their son. Eka went back to negotiate how they would share the money for the second time and to see how everything was going. But unknown to her, Ini's son, Ose, who was pretending to be sleeping, saw her speaking with the men. Ose was shocked, but decided not to call her because they might end up killing him. So he kept quiet and listened to their conversation. Ini and her husband gathered all of their savings and sold some of her belongings in order to raise the ransom money. Once they had the money, Ini went to the location specified in Eka's letter. When Ini arrived at the location, she found some men waiting for her. She gave them the money and they gave her back her son. But they also warned her not to tell anyone about the kidnapping or reveal their faces. If she did, they threatened that they would kill her son. Ini was overjoyed to have her son back, but she was also worried about the men's threats. She knew that these men were capable of anything, so she decided to keep the kidnapping a secret. 2 days after Ose was released, he met his mother and told her that he saw Eka, her friend, talking with the kidnappers, and they were discussing on how to share the money she brought. Ini couldn't believe her son. She thought he was hallucinating. He asked her son if he was sure of what he saw. He told his mother he was sure and described the kind of clothes she was wearing. Then it occurred to Ini that her son was right, that the color of the clothes she saw Eka wearing the day she was going to pay the ransom for her son was the one her son described. She kept it a secret from her husband. However, Ini's husband, Obike, suspected, and he knew that Ini was hiding something from him. So he pressed her to tell him what was going on. Finally, Ini confessed to Obike about the kidnapping and Eka's part in it. Obike was furious. He vowed to get revenge on Eka for kidnapping their son. He gathered a group of men from the village and went to Eka's house. When Obike and the men arrived at Eka's house, they found her packing their bags with her family. Eka had already planned to leave the village, fearing that Obike and Ini will eventually find out about the kidnapping. Obike and his men confronted Eka. At first, she lied, but after so much pressure from them, she confessed to kidnapping Osei. But she begged for forgiveness. Obike, however, was not forgiving. He ordered the men to arrest Eka and her family. Eka and her family were taken to the village elders. The elders were outraged by Eka's actions. They sentenced Eka to banishment from the village. Eka's husband and children were also punished for the role they played in the kidnapping, but they were not banished from the village. Eka was driven out of the village in shame. She and her family never to be seen or heard again from. Greed and wickedness always leads to trouble. Do not share your secrets to everyone you see, because not everyone is genuinely happy for what you have. Be mindful of what we say to people around us. Be careful of the kind of friends you keep around you. That is the moral in this story.